The Galactic Academy of Unified Species stood like a giant metal flower floating in the darkness of space. It was the most famous training center in all known galaxies. Young cadets from 72 different alien races came here to learn, to grow, and to prove themselves worthy of serving the Galactic Council. The station was old, very old. Some said it was built by the architects themselves, that mysterious race that had disappeared millions of years ago, leaving behind technology that no one could fully understand. Was 18 years old. She had brown eyes, messy black hair that she always tied in a ponytail, and she was shorter than most of her classmates. She was also human, which made her special in a way she did not want to be special. Humans had only discovered faster-than-light travel 20 years ago. They were the youngest species in the galactic community. Many aliens looked at humans the way adults look at small children playing with dangerous toys. The transport ship docked at the academy with a soft hum, grabbed her small bag and walked toward the exit. Her heart was beating fast. She had worked so hard to get here. She had studied for years, trained her body until her muscles screamed, and passed tests that made her brain feel like it was melting. And now she was finally here. The docking bay was enormous. Had never seen so many different aliens in one place. There were the tall, blue-skinned with their 4 arms. There were the who looked like walking trees with glowing eyes. There were the small creatures covered in soft fur who floated a few inches above the ground using their natural anti-gravity abilities. And there were many more that did not recognize. A large in a military uniform stood near the entrance. His name tag said Commander. He looked at with all 4 of his eyes and made a sound that her translation device turned into words. "Human cadet," he said. His voice was deep and not friendly. "You are late." "I am sorry," Commander said. "The transport from Earth sector had engine problems." Commander made another sound. This one her translator could not properly interpret, but she guessed it was not something nice. "Follow me. The orientation has already started. You will have to catch up." Followed the commander through long metal hallways. The walls were covered in strange symbols that seemed to glow with a soft, golden light. She had read about these symbols. They were the language of the architects, and no one in the galaxy had ever been able to understand them completely. They reached a large hall where hundreds of cadets sat in rows of floating seats. A holographic display at the front showed various parts of the academy. An elderly was speaking, his bark-like skin creaking as he moved. "And this," the was saying, "is the central core, the heart of the academy. It contains systems that even our best scientists cannot fully comprehend. The architects built this station as a place of learning, and we continue their mission to this day." Found an empty seat in the back row. The cadet next to her was a young. The small, furry creature looked at her with curious golden eyes. "You are human," the whispered. "I have never met a human before. My name is Pip." "I am nice to meet you. Your species is very new to space travel. Many here think humans should not be allowed in the academy yet. They say you are too primitive." Felt a flash of anger, but she kept her face calm. "I passed the same tests as everyone else." Pip's ears twitched in what seemed like a smile. "I do not think you are primitive. I think humans are interesting. You have only been in space for 20 years, but you learn very fast. Some species find that frightening." The orientation continued for several hours. Learned about the rules, the classes, the schedules, and the expectations. She learned that cadets were ranked based on their performance, and that the lowest-ranked cadets would be sent home at the end of each year. She learned that the academy had training areas, simulation chambers, and ancient laboratories that were still being studied by scientists. Finally, the instructor reached the last part of the orientation. "And now," he said, "we will perform the biometric registration. Every cadet must pass through the architect lock to be officially recognized as a student of this academy. The lock will scan your biological signature and assign you an access level. Most cadets receive Level 1 access, which allows entry to standard training areas. Some exceptional cadets may receive Level 2 or even Level 3 access, which opens additional facilities. The cadets began lining up in front of a large archway made of the same golden metal as the walls. The surface of the archway was covered in those mysterious architect symbols. In the center was a circular plate that glowed with soft white light. "What is the highest level?" asked Pip. "Level 3, Pip answered. "Only the most advanced minds receive it. In the entire history of the Academy, fewer than 100 cadets have ever been given Level 3 access. The lock does not just scan your body. It somehow scans your mind, your potential, your very soul. No one knows how it works." Watched as cadets approached the lock one by one. Each cadet placed their hand, or claw, or tentacle, or whatever they used for manipulation, on the circular plate. The lock would glow brighter for a moment, make a series of musical sounds, and then announce the access level in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Cadet Access Level 1. Cadet Access Level 1. Cadet Access Level 2. There was a murmur of impressed sounds when Level 2 was announced. The cadet floated away with an expression of pride on her furry face. Pip went next. The lock glowed and spoke. "Cadet Pip, Access Level 1. Pip floated back to with a small shrug. "Level 1 is normal. I am not disappointed." The line moved slowly. Hundreds of cadets were processed, one by one. Most received Level 1. A few received Level 2. No one received Level 3. Commander watched from the side with his arms crossed, looking bored. Finally, it was turn. She walked toward the archway, feeling nervous. The lock seemed bigger up close. The symbols on its surface seemed to move and shift when she looked at them directly. She took a deep breath and placed her right hand on the circular plate. The moment her skin touched the metal, something strange happened. The lock did not just glow brighter. It began to pulse with light so intense that everyone in the hall had to cover their eyes. The musical sounds did not play their normal gentle tune. Instead, the lock produced a sound that was deep and powerful, like a heartbeat that could be felt in the bones. Then the lock froze. Every system in the Academy seemed to stop at the same moment. The floating seats dropped slightly before stabilizing. The holographic displays flickered and turned off. The lights in the hallway dimmed. For 3 long seconds, everything was silent and still. Tried to pull her hand away, but she could not. The plate was holding her in place, not with physical force, but with something else, something that felt like it was reading her, understanding her, looking into every cell of her body and every thought in her mind. Then the lock spoke. But it did not announce her access level in the normal way. The voice that came from the lock was different. It was older, deeper. It spoke in a language that had never heard but somehow understood. Genetic pattern recognized. Commander stood up straight, his 4 eyes wide with shock. Biometric signature confirmed. Every alien in the hall was staring at now, some with confusion, some with fear. Neural architecture mapped, ancestral lineage VRIFID. The symbols on the lock began to glow so brightly that they lit up the entire hall like a small sun. And then the lock said the words that would change everything. Access level creator. The silence that followed was absolute. No one moved. No one breathed. Every alien in the hall stood frozen, staring at the small human girl with her hand pressed against the ancient machine. Finally managed to pull her hand away. She stepped back, her heart pounding, her mind spinning with confusion. "That is impossible," Commander said. His voice was shaking. "There is no creator level. There has never been a creator level. The lock has 3 levels, only 3. The elderly instructor approached slowly, his wooden joints creaking with each step. His glowing eyes were fixed on with an expression that was part wonder and part terror. "There is a creator level," he said quietly. "It is in the ancient texts. The architects wrote about it. But in all the millions of years this academy has existed, across all the billions of beings who have passed through the lock, no one has ever triggered it. No one. Until now. Looked at her own hand. It looked the same as always, small, human, ordinary. "What does it mean?" she asked. Her voice came out as a whisper. The turn to look at the archway. The symbols were still glowing, but now they were arranging themselves into new patterns, patterns that the instructor seemed to recognize. "It means," he said slowly, "that according to the lock you are not just a student, you are not just a cadet, according to the lock, according to the technology of the architects themselves." He paused, and in that pause, could feel the weight of 1,000,000 years of galactic history pressing down on her shoulders. "According to the lock, you are one of them. You are a creator, or at least their direct descendant." Opened her mouth to say that was crazy, that she was just a normal girl from Earth, that there had to be some mistake. But before she could speak, every door in the hallway opened at once. Every locked cabinet, every sealed chamber, every restricted area in the entire academy responded to her presence and offered her entry. And far away, in the deepest part of the station, in a room that had been sealed for millions of years, a light turned on for the first time since the architects disappeared. Something was waking up. And it was waiting for her. The news spread through the academy like fire through dry grass. Within an hour, every cadet, every instructor, and every staff member knew what had happened. The human girl had triggered the creator level. The human girl had done the impossible. Sat in a small room near the administrative offices. They had taken her there immediately after the incident in the orientation hall. 2 guards stood outside the door, not to keep her in, but to keep everyone else out. Through the small window, she could see crowds of aliens gathering in the corridor, trying to catch a glimpse of her. Pip had managed to sneak in before the guards arrived. The small floated near the ceiling, watching with worried eyes. "How are you feeling?" Pip asked. "Confused," admitted, "and scared. Everyone is looking at me like I am some kind of monster." "Not a monster," Pip said. "Something worse. A mystery. The architects are the greatest mystery in the galaxy. No one knows where they came from or where they went. They left behind technology that changed the course of history for every species, and now the lock says you are connected to them." The door opened and the elderly instructor entered. His name, had learned, he was over 3,000 years old, one of the oldest beings in the academy, and he had spent his entire life studying architect technology. "I have been in contact with the Galactic Council," said. His voice was calm but could see the excitement in his glowing eyes. "They are sending a team of scientists. They will arrive in 3 days. Until then, I have been asked to observe you and run some basic tests." "Tests?" Felt her stomach tighten with fear. "What kind of tests?" "Nothing painful. We simply need to understand what the lock detected in you. The creator level was always thought to be theoretical, a security measure that would never be used because the architects would never return. But now." Moved closer, studying with intense curiosity. "Tell me, child, do you know anything about your ancestry, your family history?" Shook her head. "My parents were ordinary people. My father worked in a factory. My mother was a teacher. We were not special. We were not important. We were just human." "Just human," repeated the word slowly. "Perhaps that is exactly the point." Over the next 2 days, ran his tests. He scans body with machines that hummed and clicked. He took samples of her blood and hair. He made her solve puzzles and answer questions while monitoring her brain activity. And throughout it all, he kept making sounds of surprise and wonder. "Extraordinary," he muttered during one session. "Your DNA is nearly identical to samples found in architect ruins across the galaxy. The proteins, the molecular structure, the genetic markers, they match. They match almost perfectly." "But humans evolved on Earth," said. "We have fossils, we have history, we know where we came from." "Do you?" asked. "Or do you know only what the evidence on your planet shows? What if that evidence was placed there? What if your evolutionary history was designed?" Did not know how to respond to that. While the tests continued, was not kept prisoner. She was still expected to attend classes with the other cadets, but everything had changed. When she walked through the hallways, conversation stopped. When she entered a classroom, all eyes turned to her. Some aliens looked at her with respect. Others looked at her with suspicion. A few looked at her with something that might have been hatred. A cadet named was one of the suspicious ones. He was tall, muscular, and his family had served in the galactic military for generations. He did not believe that a human, a member of such a young and primitive species, could possibly be connected to the architects. "The lock must be broken," said loudly in the training hall, making sure could hear. "These humans probably brought some virus with them that corrupted the system. Everyone knows they carry all kinds of diseases." Ignored him and continued practicing with her training weapon, a staff that emitted low-level energy pulses. But inside, his words burned. That evening, Pip found sitting alone in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. "You should not let bother you," Pip said, floating down to sit beside her. "He is jealous. His family is very powerful and he expected to receive level 3 access. Instead, he got level 1 just like most cadets. And then a human receives a level that no one has ever seen before. It hurts his pride." "I did not ask for this," said quietly. "I did not want to be special. I just wanted to learn. I wanted to prove that humans could be good enough to serve in the galactic community." "You did prove that. You proved it more than anyone could have imagined." Turned to look at her friend. "What do you know about the architects, Pip? Really know, not just legends." Pip's ears twitched thoughtfully. "My species has stories, old stories passed down for millions of years. They say the architects did not just build technology, they built life. They traveled across the galaxy, planting seeds of intelligence on barren worlds. They created species. They guided evolution. And then when their work was done, they disappeared." "Created species," repeated. "You mean like gods?" "Perhaps, or perhaps just very advanced scientists. The line between science and magic becomes thin when you are dealing with beings who can reshape planets and design life itself." That night could not sleep. She lay in her small room, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything she had learned. If the architects had created intelligent species across the galaxy, had they created humans too? And if so, why did the lock recognize her specifically? There had been other humans in the galactic community for 20 years. Why had none of them triggered the creator level? Unable to rest, she decided to take a walk through the academy. The halls were quiet at this hour. Most cadets were sleeping. The only sounds were the soft hum of the station systems and her own footsteps on the metal floor. She found herself drawn toward the central core, the heart of the academy that had been mentioned during orientation. It was supposed to be restricted, requiring level 3 access to enter. But as approached the massive doors, they opened automatically, recognizing her presence. Inside, the central core was breathtaking. The room was enormous, filled with machinery that pulsed with golden light. Streams of energy flowed through transparent tubes. Holographic displays showed data in the architect language, scrolling endlessly. In the center of the room stood a pillar of pure crystal, reaching from floor to ceiling, glowing with inner light. Walked toward the pillar, drawn by something she could not explain. When she reached it, she placed her hand on its surface without thinking. The moment she touched the crystal, visions flooded her mind. She saw ships, millions of ships traveling across a young galaxy. She saw beings of light moving among the stars, designing worlds, crafting ecosystems, creating the building blocks of life. She saw them visit a small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system, a planet that would one day be called Earth. She saw them plant something there, something precious, something important. And then she saw darkness. Something had come, something hungry and terrible. The architects had fought against it, sacrificed everything to push it back. They had won, but the cost had been their own existence. They had scattered themselves across the galaxy, hiding pieces of their essence in the life they had created, waiting for the day when they would be needed again. Pulled her hand away from the crystal, gasping for breath. Her mind was spinning with images and emotions that were not her own. "You saw them." The voice came from behind her. Spun around and saw standing in the doorway, his wooden form silhouetted against the light from the hallway. "How did you get in here?" asked. "The doors opened for me when I followed you. They recognized that I was with the Creator." Walked slowly toward her, his eyes fixed on the crystal pillar. "I have spent 3,000 years trying to understand this room. I have read every text, studied every artifact, analyzed every symbol, and in all that time the crystal has never responded to anyone. Until now." "I saw things," said. "Memories, I think they were memories." The architects stored their knowledge in crystal matrices. This pillar is the largest one ever discovered. If it showed you its contents, paused, his voice thick with emotion, then you truly are what the lock said. You are a creator, or at least you carry something of their essence within you. "But why me?" demanded. "Why not other humans? Why not someone more important, more prepared?" Was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "In the vision, did you see them plant something on Earth?" Nodded. "What if that something was not just genetic material? What if it was consciousness, spirit?" The architects were dying, but they did not want to disappear completely. So they hid themselves inside a new species, spreading fragments of their being across millions of years of human evolution. Most humans carry only traces, too diluted to matter. But occasionally, very rarely, those fragments combine in exactly the right way. And that combination is me. That combination is you. Before could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the central core. The holographic displays changed, showing images of something approaching from deep space. Its wooden face twisted with fear. "That is impossible. It should not be here. It should not be able to find us." "What is it?" asked. But she already knew. She had seen it in her vision, the darkness, the hunger, the thing that had destroyed the architects millions of years ago. "It is called the Void," said. "It is the enemy of all life. It consumed 100 galaxies before the architects stopped it. They trapped it, sealed it away in a prison between dimensions. But the prison is breaking. It has been breaking for centuries, and somehow it has sensed you." The crystal pillar began to pulse faster, brighter. Felt warmth spreading through her body, a warmth that seemed to come from inside her own cells. "The lock did not just recognize you," said, his voice filled with sudden understanding. "It activated you. Your presence here, your contact with the crystal, it sent a signal across the galaxy. The Void felt that signal. It knows the architects are returning. It knows its enemy is waking up." Looked at her hands. They were beginning to glow with the same golden light as the architect's symbols. "What do I do?" she whispered. "I do not know," admitted. "No one knows. You are the first creator to exist in millions of years. The Academy was built for this moment, but no one ever truly believed it would come." Outside, through the transparent walls of the central core, could see something appearing in the darkness of space. It was not a ship. It was not a creature. It was an absence, a hole in reality itself, growing larger with each passing second. The Void had arrived, and realized that her journey was just beginning. The Academy shook like a leaf in a storm. Cadets and instructors ran through the hallways in panic. Emergency protocols activated across every system. Ships tried to flee, but the Void was too fast, too hungry. 2 transport vessels disappeared into the growing darkness, their signals vanishing in an instant. Stood in the central core, watching the horror unfold through the transparent walls. The Void was enormous now, a tear in space itself that swallowed light and matter alike. She could feel its presence pressing against her mind, cold and ancient, and filled with endless hunger. "The station's shields will not hold," said. The old was working frantically at a console, his wooden fingers moving across holographic controls. "Nothing can hold against the void. Not technology, not weapons, not anything we have built in millions of years." "Then what can stop it?" asked. "The architects stopped it once. They used their own life force, their own essence to create a barrier. They sacrificed themselves to seal it away." Looked at her with desperate hope in his eyes. "You carry that essence now. Perhaps you can do what they did." "Sacrifice myself?" "I do not know. No one knows. You are walking a path that no being has walked for millions of years." The crystal pillar behind pulsed brighter. More images flooded her mind, faster now, more urgent. She saw how the architects had fought the void. She saw their technology, their weapons, their strategies. Nothing had worked. The void consumed everything. It was not evil in the way living beings understood evil. It simply was. It existed to consume, the way fire exists to burn. But she also saw something else. She saw the moment when the architects found the answer. They realized that the void could not consume creation itself. It could eat matter, energy, even thought. But it could not eat the spark of life, the fundamental force that made things grow and change and become more than they were. The architects had sacrificed their physical forms, but they had not died. They had transformed. They had become pure creative essence, spreading themselves across the galaxy, waiting inside every living being, dormant but not dead. The void had been trapped not by a prison, but by life itself. Every living creature in the galaxy was a tiny piece of the barrier, a small flame that the darkness could not extinguish. But the barrier was weakening. As civilizations rose and fell, as species developed technology that separated them from nature, they forgot what they were. They forgot that life was sacred, that creation was sacred, that the spark within them was all that stood between existence and oblivion. Understood now. The creator level was not just about genetics or ancestry. It was about awareness. The lock had recognized that she carried the potential to remember, to awaken, to become a bridge between what the architects were and what all living beings could be. "I need to go out there," said. Stared at her, into space toward the void. "That is madness. The barrier is made of life. Every living being is part of it, but they have forgotten. I need to remind them. I need to show them what they are." "How?" Looked at her glowing hands. "I do not know yet, but I will figure it out." She ran from the central core, her feet carrying her toward the docking bay without conscious thought. The hallways were chaos. Cadets were crying. Instructors were shouting orders that no one followed. Through every window, the void grew larger, closer, hungrier. Reached the docking bay and found a small shuttle. She had trained on similar vehicles during her preparation for the academy. She climbed inside, powered up the engines, and launched herself toward the darkness. "Human cadet, return immediately." Commander's voice crackled over the communication system. "You cannot survive out there." Did not respond. She flew the shuttle away from the academy directly toward the void. As she approached, she could feel the cold pressing against the ship, against her mind, against her very soul. The void was aware of her. It recognized the spark within her, the fragment of its ancient enemy. For a moment, she felt fear so intense that she almost turned back. The void was vast beyond comprehension. It had consumed galaxies. It had destroyed civilizations that made the current galactic community look like children playing with blocks. What could one human girl possibly do against such power? But then she felt something else. Warmth. Connection. She felt Pip back on the station, scared but still hopping. She felt watching her shuttle on his displays, praying in whatever way his species prayed. She felt the proud cadet who had mocked her, now frozen with terror like everyone else. She felt millions of beings on the station and billions more across the galaxy, all connected, all carrying that tiny spark of creative essence. The architects had not just created life. They had become life, And life was not just one girl in a shuttle. Life was everything, everywhere, all at once. Closed her eyes and reached out with her mind, using abilities she had not known she possessed until this moment. She touched consciousness after consciousness, not controlling them but awakening them. She showed them what she had seen in the crystal pillar. She shared the truth that the architects had hidden inside every living cell. You are not alone, she told them. You are not separate. You are all connected. You are all part of something greater, and that something greater is stronger than the darkness. Across the galaxy, beings of every species felt something stir within them. On distant worlds, creatures looked up at their skis and felt a warmth they could not explain. On ships traveling through space, crews stopped their panicked actions and stood still, listening to a voice that spoke without words. In the academy, cadets and instructors alike fell silent, their differences forgotten, their fears fading as they felt the truth that was sharing. The spark was real, it had always been real, they had just forgotten. Opened her eyes. Her shuttle was now surrounded by golden light, a light that seemed to come from within her own body. She was glowing like a small sun, and that glow was spreading, touching every mind she had awakened, connecting every life form in a web of pure creative energy. The void felt it too. The darkness hesitated. For the first time in its eternal existence, it faced not just one enemy but billions. Every living being was now a piece of the barrier, conscious of their role, actively pushing back against the hunger. But the void was old and cunning. It concentrated its power, forming a tendril of absolute darkness that reached towards Shuttle. If it could destroy her, the awakening would fade. The beings would forget again. The barrier would continue to weaken. Did not run. She flew directly toward the tendril. "What are you doing?" Pip's voice came over the communication system, filled with terror. "Please." "Trust me," said. "Trust all of us." She reached out her hands, and the light within her blazed brighter than ever before. The shuttle disintegrated around her, but she did not die. She floated in the vacuum of space, protected by an envelope of pure creative energy. She was no longer just human cadet from Earth. She was a focus point for the combined will of every living being in the galaxy. The tendril of darkness struck her, and she held it. The impact was beyond physical, beyond mental, beyond anything that could be described in words. It was a collision between existence and non-existence, between the desire to create and the desire to consume, between love and hunger. Felt herself being torn apart at the deepest level of her being. But she also felt them, all of them, Pip. Even and beyond them, billions upon billions of minds, all lending their strength, all pushing back against the darkness. The barrier was no longer a passive thing. It was active, alive, aware. The void screamed. It was a sound that no ears could hear, but every soul in the galaxy felt it. The darkness began to retreat, not because it was defeated, but because it could not feed. Every piece of matter it tried to consume was infused with creative essence. Every mind it tried to break was connected to countless others. There was nowhere for it to find purchase, nowhere for it to begin its consumption. Slowly, painfully, the tier in space began to close. The void was being pushed back into its prison, not by technology, not by weapons, but by the simple act of living beings choosing to live, choosing to create, choosing to connect. Poured everything she had into the effort. She felt herself fatting, her consciousness spreading thin across the barrier. She was becoming part of it, just as the architects had become part of it millions of years ago. But then she felt something holding her back, a thread of warmth, a connection to her physical existence. It was Pip. The little was sending her love, her friendship, her desperate need for to return. "You cannot go," Pip's thoughts reached her. "The architects made a choice, but you do not have to make the same one. The barrier is strong now. Everyone remembers, come back to us." Hesitated. The barrier was indeed stronger than it had ever been. The awakening had worked. Every living being now carried a conscious piece of the architect's legacy. They would not forget again. They would teach their children, and their children would teach their children, and the barrier would grow stronger with each generation. She did not need to sacrifice herself. The architects had given everything because they were alone, but was not alone. She had never been alone. She reached toward Pip's warmth and pulled herself back from the edge of dissolution. The golden light around her flickered, then stabilized. She was still glowing, still connected to the web of consciousness, but she was also still herself. Still human. Still. A rescue shuttle arrived moments later. Commander himself flew it, his 4 hands working the controls with desperate speed. He pulled inside and flew back toward the academy at maximum speed. The void was gone. The tear in space had sealed. The darkness had retreated to its prison, weakened and contained by a barrier that was now stronger than ever. Lay on the floor of the shuttle, exhausted beyond measure. Commander looked at her with eyes that held no more suspicion, no more pride, only profound gratitude and respect. "I was wrong about your species," he said quietly. "We all were." In the weeks that followed, everything changed. Scientists from across the galaxy came to study what had happened. They confirmed what had discovered. Every living being carried a fragment of the architect's essence, a spark of creative power that could be awakened and strengthened. Humanity was recognized not as a primitive young species, but as the carriers of the architect's legacy. Earth had been the last world the architects visited before their transformation, and they had placed more of themselves in humans than in any other species. This was why humans learned so quickly, adapted so easily, created so readily. They were the children of the creators, carrying the strongest flame. Returned to being a cadet, but nothing was the same. She was no longer the small, ordinary girl trying to prove herself. She was the awakener, the one who had reminded the galaxy of what it truly was. Statues were built in her honor. Songs were written about her bravery. Her story was taught in schools on every inhabited world. But did not care about any of that. She cared about Pip, who remained her closest friend. She cared about learning and growing and becoming the best version of herself. She cared about the quiet moments between classes, sitting on the observation deck, watching the stars and knowing that somewhere out there, the barrier held strong. The void would return someday. The darkness was patient and eternal, but so was life, so was creation, so was the spark that burned in every living soul. And when the darkness came again, knew that she would not face it alone. None of them would ever be alone again. On her graduation day, 3 years later, stood before the same biometric lock that had changed her life. The ceremony required her to touch it one more time to officially complete her training. She placed her hand on the circular plate without fear. The lock glowed golden, warm and familiar. "Kirachen," it announced. "Creator, AWAKNER, Guardian of the Flame." And then, in a voice that seemed to smile, it added, "Welcome home." Smiled back. Behind her, Pip floated proudly. Beside her, watched with tears of joy in his ancient eyes. Around her, cadets of every species stood together, no longer divided by origin or history, but united by the truth they now understood. They were all creators, every single one of them. And together, they would protect the light for all eternity.